is Ron Paul being ignored by the media? 97% of you said yes, he is. 3% said no. And listen to this. We had voters from 26 different countries voting in that poll.
And what the reason that he's essentially being ignored is?
The media doesn't believe that Ron Paul has a hoot and hell's chance of winning the Iowa caucuses, winning the Republican nomination, or winning the presidency. So we're going to ignore him.
Go ahead, Stephanie.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's, Howard, because that's the one thing Donald Trump has ever been right about, is that he's unelectable.
By the way, Ron Paul cannot get elected, I'm sorry to tell you.
Another question about electability. Do you have any, sir? There is always the question as to whether or not you are, in fact, viable. Your differences with the...
But then how do you explain it, Andrew? The other 40% is a little wacky.
Well, there's a percentage of this country that's crazy. And the crazy people, they're going to have somewhere to go in Ron Paul. I do agree with Tucker, though. I mean, when his book first came out, and the Fed, I'm like, what the heck is he talking about? And a lot of other people. But a lot of the things that he says, you shake your head, you go, huh. He's consistent, sometimes consistently crazy in his foreign policy comments.
Takes him seriously.
Yeah, and they're frustrated by it.
But we talk about that. We talk about Ron Paul at least 3 or 4 times a year.
Also, he presents himself and his body language as Mr. Burns' kinder, simple brother.
Yes.
Without objection, the gentleman is granted 5 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I have a few questions for my colleagues. What if our foreign policy of the past century is deeply flawed and has not served our national security interests? What if we wake up one day and realize that the terrorist threat is a predictable consequence of our meddling in the affairs of others and has nothing to do with us being free and prosperous? What if propping up repressive regimes in the Middle East endangers both the United States and Israel? What if occupying countries like Iraq and Afghanistan and bombing Pakistan is directly related to the hatred directed toward us? What if someday it dawns on us that losing over 5,000 American military personnel in the Middle East since 9/11 is not a fair trade-off for the loss of nearly 3,000 American citizens, no matter how many Iraqi, Pakistani, and Afghan people are killed or displaced? What if we finally decide that torture, even if called enhanced interrogation technique, is self-destructive and produces no useful information, and that contracting it out to a third world nation is just as evil? What if it is finally realized that war and military spending is always destructive to the economy? What if all wartime spending is paid for through the deceitful and evil process of inflating and borrowing? What if we finally see that wartime conditions always undermine personal liberty? What if conservatives who preach small government wake up and realize that our interventionist foreign policy provides the greatest incentive to expand the government? What if conservatives understood once again that their only logical position is to reject military intervention and managing an empire throughout the world? What if the American people woke up and understood that the official reasons for going to war are almost always based on lies and promoted by war propaganda in order to serve special interests? What if we as a nation came to realize that the quest for empire eventually destroys all great nations? What if Obama has no intention of leaving Iraq? What if a military draft is being planned for the wars that will spread if our foreign policy is not changed? What if the American people learn the truth, that our foreign policy has nothing to do with national security, that it never changes from one administration to the next? What if war and preparation for war is a racket serving the special interests? What if President Obama is completely wrong about Afghanistan and turns out worse than Iraq and Vietnam put together? What if Christianity actually teaches peace and not preventive wars of aggression? What if diplomacy is found to be superior to bonds and bribes in protecting America? What happens if my concerns are completely unfounded? Nothing. But what happens if my concerns are justified and ignored? Nothing good. And I yield back the balance of my time.
The Secretary of Defense has said that there are fewer foreign service diplomats posted overseas than there are sailors and Marines on one aircraft carrier. There are more musicians in the military bands than there are diplomats across the board. So we are trying to shift this gigantic ship of state, Mr. Paul, and we are looking for your help to do so. And at the risk of going over our time, I just want to say, having campaigned during the last presidential election, you had the most enthusiastic supporters of anybody I ever saw.
I'd love to hear that.
Well, I mean, my goodness, everywhere I went, they were literally running down highways holding your signs. Now, I've never had a chance to tell you that, but your message obviously resonated with a lot of people.
Thank you.
You're going to encourage him.
But, you know, when you think about it, if you measured everything I've ever said, every vote I've ever taken against the Constitution, you know, I'm a strict constitutionalist. Are you suggesting the Republicans should write me off because I'm a strict constitutionalist? I'm the most conservative member here. I have voted, you know, against more spending and waste in government than anybody else. So you're suggesting that I'm not electable and the Republicans don't want me because I'm a strict fiscal conservative? Because I believe in civil liberties? Why should we not be defending civil liberties? And why should we not be talking about foreign policy that used to be the part of the Republican Party?
I think the Patriot Act is unpatriotic because it undermines our liberty.
And I can tell you, if Rick Santorum and when Rick Santorum is president, Iran will not get a nuclear weapon because the world as we know it will be no more.
Congressman Paul, 30 seconds.
You've heard the war propaganda that is liable to lead us into the sixth war, and I worry about that position. Iran is a threat because they have some militants there. But believe me, they're all around the world, and they're all around the world, and they're not a whole lot different than others. Iran does not have an air force that can come here. They can't even make enough gasoline for themselves. And here we are, you know, building this case up, please, they're building up this case just like we did in Iraq. Build up the war propaganda. There was no Al-Qaeda in Iraq, and they had nuclear weapons, and we had to go in. I'm sure you supported that war as well. Okay. It's time we quit this. It's time. It's trillions of dollars we're spending on these wars.
Ask themselves, why does this 70-ish weird guy have all this support? Like, what is he saying that's resonating? And by the way, how can we address those concerns? Like, maybe people do care about the Fed and soft money. Maybe they're not happy with Afghanistan. I mean, like, think this through a little bit.
There you have it. My guest now, Congressman Ron Paul. Congressman, thank you so much for being here. Let me start with this because it's starting to make some more and more headlines. Not your campaign and your candidacy, but the fact that the media is ignoring you. Are they?
Sure. Yeah, they are, and we need to ask them why. I mean, what are they afraid of? We're doing well. We're certainly in the top tier. We showed we did well in Iowa, and we have a good organization. We can raise money, but they don't want to discuss my views because I think they're frightened by us challenging the status quo and the establishment when it comes to foreign policy, monetary policy, the entitlement system, because my views are quite different than the other candidates. So they would just as soon us not get the coverage that the others are getting, and they will concentrate on establishment-type politicians.
There seems to be a narrative emerging that you can't win, and therefore they're giving you back of the hand treatment. There was an editorial in the Wall Street Journal that said he has no chance to win. This despite the fact that you were 152 votes within the top spot in the Iowa straw poll. In fact, out of almost 17,000 votes cast, you were, 150 or so away from number one. But the Wall Street Journal and others say you can't win. Why? Why do they believe that?
Well, they want to believe it, and they want to promote an idea. They don't want to promote information, because there have been a couple of polls where I either came in first or second when you match my name up against Obama, because my views really compete. And this would be a reason the Democrats don't want me to win either, because I can compete against Obama, because his base is very unhappy with his expansion of the war and his lack of interest in protecting civil liberties, and therefore they don't want to hear from me either. But I have done quite well. I'm quite willing to match my name up against Obama any time of the day.
It's got to be somewhat frustrating for you. I mean, to come in second and be as close as you were to winning in Iowa, not to mention the polling that you've been doing, which is fairly good. To have this kind of treatment in the media, does it disturb you?
Well, it disturbs me. I don't use the word frustrating, because I think I anticipate, I know how the system works, and I know what I'm trying to do, because it's not like I'm just trying to win and get elected. I'm trying to change the course of history. And our history in this country hasn't been good for the last 100 years, whether it's our drift into manage an empire, a destruction of our currency, the deficits that have been run up, the climax of the dollar reserve standard. This is big stuff, and nobody else is addressing this. So I'm, in spite of all the shortcomings of the reporting on this, I write it off a bit, because they don't have any idea about the significance of the monetary system and what's going on with the Federal Reserve. But the people, grassroots America, is starting to wake up. Millions of people are reading about the Federal Reserve and understanding how they bail out their friends, create trillions of dollars, give a third of all that money they used in the bailout and give it to foreign banks. People are realizing this, even though the media, generally speaking, they don't understand it. They don't ask me the right questions. And if they do understand it, they don't want to get the secret out on how the system that we have protects the special interests, the big corporations, the corporatism that runs our society.
As the race for the Republican nomination heats up, there is one candidate who has been largely ignored by the mainstream media. Shame on us. He deserves more attention from us than he's getting. Ron Paul makes a lot of sense, and more people ought to listen to him. The Texas congressman has visionary ideas about where the country ought to be going.